Welcome to the Successfully Retired podcast with Hamilton Brandenburg.
Okay, I got my guy Hamilton, and this is going to be a different format. We often have calls together, and when we're done with it, we say we should have recorded that because basically it's just us talking about what we're working on each day, asking advice. A client did this. What do you think about that? So we decided just to record it today. I have no idea what he's going to say, but basically I'm just going to throw it over.
Clients dirty. We're going to air their dirty laundry for the whole world.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But
kidding.
Honestly, just a little peek into kind of how we talk to each other behind the scenes and help each other, because not all of this is black and white. There's a lot of nuance to different client situations, and so we'll just throw it over to you, buddy. Let me know kind of what you're working on today, and we'll dive into it.
Sure. So I don't know about you, Rick, but something that I have noticed over the past couple weeks is so we just got done with our surge meetings, and it always blows my mind when you're kind of rechecking in with people that everybody had like the plan for like, okay, we're going to retire at this stage, we're going to do this. And I felt like this past quarter, it's been like every person I talk to, their life is changing in a big, unpredictable way. And we're really pivoting and updating it. And I'll give you a couple examples. I had literally two clients, and this was actually some follow-up from this. So this was last week. Two clients who quit their jobs of almost 30 years unexpectedly because of how they're being treated in the workplace.
Yeah.
And because of the expectations being changed and the goalposts moving. And so one of them called me and was like, I'm going to quit my job tomorrow because Friday I had a horrible meeting. And I was like, all right, well, cool. Let's talk about that. And then the other one is a lady who's actually in her late 70s and loves working and just had a bad run-in with her supervisor and decided to say, screw you, and leave him. So it was interesting just kind of being a part of it and seeing how life transition has happened and just all the stuff that's going into completely redoing the plan or pivoting and making big adjustments that nobody could have seen coming, right? No one would have known this. And if you just did like the plan, it would be useless by now. Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. That the plan, the plan that you just did, and are all excited about is likely out of date before the ink dries on it. And so the right way to do that is, still do that plan or planning to get started, to have a baseline. Here's a way to make some decisions, but the real value is ongoing updates and changes, whether they be minor or what you're talking about here, which is literally we quit our job, we sold the house, someone got sick early, like all these different changes, and you need to go back to the drawing board and work with what you have.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. One of the clients who quit her job, it was, she hasn't retired yet. So it was more of a, hey, rerun the numbers, but also like, I'm not 60 yet, and I'll have a lot of pre-tax stuff. So what do I do for cash flow in the meantime? How we're going to retire under 60 years old. So you have to learn how to pivot quickly. But, I think it's interesting too, because I don't know about you, Rick, but after both of those meetings, really all that the client wanted was, am I okay? They really didn't want to know how, like, okay, tell me every little last detail about how we're going to do things. They're just like, hey, let me know that we're still fine. And do I need to do anything different? And after that, it's just like off the phone. Okay, done.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sitting there doing all these calculations and checking things and re-upping things, but able to come back with a quick, hey, you're good, because we did the work for them. So just because people can't, when you're in that headspace where it's something like that's happened and you've had a bad meeting at work, like you're not thinking clearly, no matter how smart you are and how cool you are. Like it's stressful and it fogs your brain,
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because it's interesting that you said that. I had a similar situation that we'll go into in a little bit, but for the person that was not 60 yet, is she 100% like, no, I'm going back to work, I just want to know if we're okay? Or did she consider like, hey, now that I'm getting closer, do you want to take a peek under the hood and see if maybe I don't have to go back to work?
Yeah, so I had like a 3-year plan. Well, they had a 3-year plan to retire. I secretly had a 1-year plan for them because
Okay.
they both really were like, okay, I think we need to wait 2 or 3 years to retire. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, if you need to, that's fine. But I had crunched the numbers several times, like you could retire next year. So
Well,
on
what does that
my
mean? They need to, they think they need to out of fear, or they need to because something with their job they feel obligated to, or something
Yeah,
like that.
not definitely not the job and obligation. More so making
Okay.
sure there's enough money, because
Yeah.
there's that big concern there, and changing going from 2 incomes to one retirement distribution is stressful, and
No doubt.
it's a lot. And so I think people like to have that extra buffer. So my thing to
Yeah.
them has always been like, look, 2 or 3 years, if that makes you more comfortable, do that. But I also know that every year that we meet, you're more and more saying, "Oh my God, work is so rough. I hate it
Yeah.
right now." Not that you hate the people, but it's the routine. And living in Metro Atlanta like I do, everybody who's driving to work, man, you're commuting a lot because we're all out in the
Yeah.
burbs and traffic sucks. So I'm hearing more and more the frustrations, and I'm kind of preparing for what I thought would happen, which was they would say, "Hey, can we go ahead and retire early?" Turns
Yeah.
out it was kind of forced a little bit, but just having a few different scenarios that I'd already worked out, even if I didn't share it with the client, of making sure that
Yeah.
you could actually, if this comes up, I'm going to preemptively have a plan in place to tackle that.
Similar experience very recently where a guy called and said, I was just putting out, hey, it's time for our spring meetings, and in the meeting invite where you pick your date, it just has a generic, here's what we're going to go over, would you like to add anything to the agenda, type it here. And
Yeah.
that typically is like, just want to see how we're doing, or
Yep.
I have a question about my kids or something. And he's like, just passively like, oh yeah, I got laid off 2 months ago and I want to know if I can retire early. And like, I'm like, what
my
in the
God.
hell? How is this like just, typing that in there randomly? So it's a very similar experience. He got laid off, a few years out from what the planned retirement was.
Sure.
And it was an interesting meeting because I did give them a few options.
Okay.
And I know that he especially was not happy at work. And so option one is get a equal to lateral job
Sure.
and stick to the original plan. Here's all the benefits that go along with that, right?
Yep.
Because they're on the borderline of like, we can make it work, but it's not, you don't have too much money yet.
Sure.
So working actually, typically I'm trying to get people to leave earlier. Working is better for them, but
Yes.
because these are two incomes that combined is, a nice combined household income for Central Pennsylvania. He alone doesn't actually make like tons of money. So
Sure.
the other option that I threw out to them, and he has not committed to one yet, is if you take your Social Security at 62, which is this year, and then work part-time at doing something that you actually enjoy,
Yep.
and stay under the earnings limit, when we back out the fact that you're not paying as much FICA tax on half of that, and you're not contributing to your 401k and all these other things,
Yep.
you're netting about the same amount of money, and you're a hell of a lot happier.
Yeah.
Yes, it still is a net negative impact financially because you're taking your Social Security now and not delaying it. And yes,
Yep.
if the employer was paying you and you were contributing to your 401k, you'd have more money, but we're only talking about a couple of years here.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting conversation where they're really considering, do I want to go back to work doing something that I don't enjoy, not having the free time that I want for another couple of years for this slight financial uptick?
Yeah.
Or should I just collect my Social Security, go work part-time at the golf course, and have a very, very similar likely experience financially, and I don't know what he's going to do yet, but it's interesting because I don't think people think that way sometimes, where you can kind of put something together like that.
It's interesting too. That's so your scenario reminds me a lot of that same talk I had with my client last week. And one thing that bubbled to my head was, you know, quitting your job a year or two early, where maybe you're going to miss $20,000 or $30,000 worth of money that you're putting into the market, is a lot less detrimental if you have been planning, if you have been saving, if you're disciplined. It's a lot less detrimental to you than if you delay investing in your 30s when you're saving 5 or 10 grand a year, right? So, you know, it's at that point, it's hard because for people who are really disciplined and they started young and they were putting a lot of money away, the thought of like, this is a year or two that I'm not going to save that. And I told my client, I was like, well, listen, honestly, you could put all that money in the market and the market could go tank.
Yeah.
By
You're at the same
again.
spot. Yeah. You're likely at the same spot 24 months later. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're at the same spot either way. So might as well go ahead and quit early because you've done a good enough job saving. It's not going to make a material impact. Now, if you're saving like $200,000 or $300,000 into a cash balance plan and all this craziness,
we'll
okay,
notice
totally
that.
different story. But
well, in this scenario, in this scenario, wife continues to work for the allotted time, and again, he would be, if he's working part time, he would be working part time for the same amount that she's working full time.
Yeah.
I always like to try to retire people at the same time because no matter what they say, unless there's a massive age gap, as soon as one spouse retires, 2 months later, the other one's getting pissed off that they got to go to work at 6 a.m. and the other one's sitting on the recliner, right?
Dude,
so
every time.
No matter what they say, I already know that's going to happen, so I plan for it. But she's got the better benefits. She works at the hospital. They're putting a ton of money in her pension and all these other things, right? So we're going to keep her working, and she actually doesn't hate what she does. So that's easy. But here's what the key factor is, and you brought up a point about not adding in those last couple of years. The key to this particular plan was that, yes, if he chooses that option, he's not adding to in the last couple of years, but we're also not withdrawing yet.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to say, oh, and also we want 15 grand from the portfolio. Like, they're not touching that money until the original retirement date, which makes a huge impact. He's cash flowing himself by the combination of Social Security and a part-time job under the earnings limit if he chooses that. And they're not allowed to touch the investments until the original retirement date. And the trade-off is he gets to start enjoying himself and having peace of mind and less stress a few years earlier. And maybe they bring in a few $1,000s less net.
Yep.
And for most people, that trade-off is acceptable.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think when you go in, and especially when you look at, okay, sometimes one spouse retiring early doesn't mean you need to turn on portfolio distributions, right? And and that's a big thing. Or if you're spending and taking a whole lot out sooner than expected, that's probably more of a factor to consider than just not saving for an extra year.
Yeah,
100%.
No doubt.
And it's funny when you talked about people when they retire at different ages. I would go ahead and say that even when there is a big age gap, and I'm thinking about a client in particular who has, a little like a 12-year age gap, and he retired in COVID, and his wife is retiring this year. But like every year between now and then, she's like, "Can I retire yet? Can you talk to Hamilton and see if I can retire yet?" But she's healthy and she's young and she enjoys her work. But like you said, it's when one spouse is sitting at home, doing projects and having a good time, and the other one's still commuting. It's not fun, and then we get to be
it's not. And the other thing that comes up is it is this, but it's not just the spouse that's going to work, rolling their eyes when they walk out and the other spouse is still in his slippers.
Yeah.
It's that they have one spouse has the free time to do the things that they want to do together.
Yeah.
But the other one can't get the free time, can't get away. So they can't randomly go visit their kids that live in a different state for 3 weeks. Yep, they can't go to Florida to get out of the Pennsylvania winters for 2 months yet because the other spouse is working. So it's actually holding back the retired spouse as well.
Yeah.
And I just, if it's possible, always try to time them up close within reason, because inevitably they come back and say, you got to retire the other one because I'm sitting at home doing nothing.
Yeah, they're just stuck at home playing Mario Kart or whatever the equivalent of doing that is.
Yeah, right.
Just
No,
waiting, like, hey.
No, that's super. It's super interesting that you said that though, because I'm not recalling something that this literally was this month that happened. So it's funny. It must not be unique. If you're going through it, I'm going through it. It's something that happens all the time to people. And it's not just losing your job. It's other big life events, but like life is crazy, and almost all of it somehow gets tied back to your finances. So if you're not updating your plan, if you're not doing the kind of things that we do on a regular basis, the decisions you made even 2 or 3 years ago are so out of date that,
so true.
You might think we did this great thing. We went and we got this plan and here it is in this beautiful leather binder. And stop it. You know what I mean? It's not how life works. And whether it's making a decision that could actually hurt you, or oftentimes it's just, you might not know any better, but by reviewing and updating stuff, you could optimize things more because of what's changed. It might not mean you're going to be destitute when you're 80, but you could actually do more if you were keeping things up to date. So I think that's a good place to stop. I love this, by the way. I don't know if the listeners do, but I think we should keep doing this because just off the cuff, what are you working on?
You just need a front porch and two rocking chairs, and I think that would complete the picture.
Yeah. But listen, if it's happening to a client or a prospect that we're meeting, it's happening to a lot of other people out there, and hopefully they can take something from it. But that's the spot. Thanks for coming on. We're going to keep doing this one.
This show reflects the personal opinions and viewpoints of the host and Brandenburg Financial Services. Opinions and viewpoints are subject to change at any time without notice. No representation is made as to the accuracy, completeness, or relevance of the information presented. The information discussed is general in nature and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Consult with your tax, legal, and financial professionals about your specific situation. Past performance does not indicate future returns, and any indices mentioned are for reference and cannot be invested in directly. Brandenburg Financial Services is a DBA of CS Planning, an SEC registered investment advisor.